People come and live in a rural area like West Suffolk because they want a particular way of life. If they wanted to live in a city, of course they would do so. And in a city, of course, there is much more noise. And that is part of the life of an urban environment. People move to the market towns and villages of an area like Suffolk because they want peace and quiet. They don't want the hustle and bustle of an urban area. One of the most curious decisions by the government, it would appear, is that they decided to move Flightpaths away essentially from the more urban parts of the country to look at flying planes over the more rural parts of our country. And they instigated a consultation process to see whether this could be brought about. Now, understandably, this has caused very considerable concern. And in an area like West Suffolk, there has been something approaching uproar. And it's hardly surprising, because the consultation process was extremely limited and very flawed. When the representatives of NATS, the organisation which had been put in place by the government to review the pattern of flight paths, when they came to see me, it was clear that they had not, for example, realised that by having planes flying as low as 4,000 feet, this could have a devastating impact on the equine studs around Newmarket. And Newmarket is, after all, the world headquarters of racing. If the stud farms felt that it was an unattractive environment to breed racehorses, of course they would move, with all the terrible economic consequences for the horse racing industry. I had many letters on the subject, pointing out quite correctly that the consultation process results were very flawed. For example, there were no alternatives. Can you imagine a situation where you have a so-called consultation and you come up with a recommendation without any other options whatsoever? Now, most of the planes flying into Stansted, which is the airport which particularly affects my constituency, come from the continent of Europe or fly to the continent of Europe. No provision for consideration was made about the possibility of the stacking essentially to be done over the North Sea, thus actually producing a much less noisy environment for planes coming into land. Of course, we have to accept that passenger numbers have soared over the years, that people like to fly, and that there is a real problem on these small islands of ours about how to absorb this. But of course, what we have seen through this consultation is indeed a very flawed and wholly unacceptable process. I raised the matter in Parliament, we've had many meetings and much correspondence, and I am delighted that the force of the argument which has been presented has been accepted, and that this consultation process will be revisited later in the year, in the second half of the year. This decision has been a very bad one originally. I'm glad they have changed their minds, and I hope that when they come back to consider the future of stacking and flight paths into Stansted over Suffolk, that they will take a much more radical view, which will leave the lives of my constituents in the villages and also the future of the horse racing industry in much better shape than it would be if the original plans had gone ahead. I will continue to fight this because I know how important this is for the lives of my constituents.